Welcome to CBS Sports HQ. Amanda Garrett with you here for the next hour. It was a wild week 2 in college football. Major upsets, including Oregon over Ohio State. So what can we expect in week 3? We got a major matchup in the swamp. Number 1 Alabama at number 11 Florida. The SEC on CBS. By the way, Alabama has been head and shoulders above everybody this season. So can Florida give them a fight? You got Penn State hosting Auburn. This is going to be a tough test for Auburn on the road, and BYU coming off that big win over Utah will look to stay dominant. Let's welcome in 2 of our experts. We got Brady, Quinn with me. Also, Danny Kanell making an appearance here on set. Welcome back. It's been a minute.
I missed you guys. I had to see you guys in person, you know.
It's been too long. It's been too long.
The occasional, just once every couple months you're going to show up here. Let's dive into it. We got the SEC on CBS, the big one, Alabama at Florida. Dan Mullen still going with Emory Jones over Anthony Richardson here. So Alabama, it's the smallest spread they've seen so far. It's still pretty big, 15.5. The over-under here is 57.5. Danny, since you're new, you're back. We'll start with you.
All right, sounds good. So we saw wild upsets last week. Like, we're trying to figure out these teams, and you get all these surprises. But the one constant we know, Bama is hands down the best team in college football, and I don't think it matters if they play neutral site like they did against Miami or if they have to go into the swamp. I'm laying these 15.5 all day long. Amanda, you did mention that Anthony Richardson wasn't going to start. I actually might have had a little bit more concern about this game for Alabama if Anthony Richardson was going to get the nod, but he did hurt his hamstring on one of those big runs that he rattled off. I don't know where his health is. I think Emory Jones is a problem for the Gators, so I don't think they're going to have any chance of staying in this game. I think Alabama rolls, especially now they're getting Jason McClellan involved in the run game. Good luck, Gators.
Dan Mullen says there's not a quarterback controversy. There should be. Yes. Anthony Richardson has come in and legitimately given them a bit of a surge every single time, but as you can see the Bryce Young highlight, that's one of the elements that I think coming in this season. I was curious to see Alabama only return 2 starting offensive linemen. Bryce Young's ability to buy time and then make the most of just playing from the pocket, those talented wide receivers on the outside, he's been phenomenal this year. He's my Heisman candidate for the year. I said it earlier, I'm going to keep saying it often. There's nothing that should stand in this young man's way with the talent they have around him and the way he can extend plays. That's going to be a problem for this Florida defense. Danny, I'm with you. I like Bama. I'm going to lay the points. I think they're by far and away the best team in the country. And until Dan Mullen wants to start playing Anthony Richardson more, which I think would actually help out the Gators in this case, it's just hard to buy into them staying close in this one. I do think there are going to be some points scored. We don't know if Will Anderson's going to play, the outstanding edge rusher for Alabama. If he does, that obviously helps out Florida a little bit. So I like the over as well, not just laying the 15.5 points with Bama.
We have Auburn traveling to Penn State. So Auburn has had 2 pretty easy home games so far. They're going to Penn State. This is a hostile environment for your very first road game. Penn State favored by 6 at home. Brady, any hopes for Auburn to cover that number?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the tough thing for me, I think it's more of a challenge for Bo Nix. It's not like he's been prolific through the air necessarily. They've really relied heavily on Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter, who both have been able to rush for over 100 yards past couple games so far this year. My concern is that secondary for Penn State going up against that group. Those boys can ball now. Jaquan Brisker, Joey Porter Jr., those guys can get after. So it's going to be a tough challenge, I think, at night versus the whiteout. All that crowd noise, that's where Penn State is amped up. They traditionally play really well versus ranked teams at home, in particular with the whiteout. So I love Penn State's chances here. That being said, if you're looking at the number, look at the line, I'm going to go ahead and take the points at Auburn. I do think Penn State wins this game, though.
I'm with you. I would lean Auburn in the points. They've scored 60 points back-to-back for the first time since 1932. This offense looks great, but it's been against subpar competition. Brian Harsin's coming in. I like that he's building up Bo Nix's confidence, but I've seen this story too many times before. I need to see what Bo Nix does against a legitimate opponent in a really, really hostile environment with that whiteout that's going. You know what else I don't really trust? Is Sean Clifford. He's been good, but not great. He's kind of coming along. If he could excel in this offense, I think Penn State could be one of the better teams in the Big Ten, but if I haven't seen it yet, so I think both these quarterbacks and these offenses might struggle in this game against really good defenses. So I'm going to take the under. I think it's an ugly, kind of bang around game where they're trying to figure things out. I don't think there's a lot of points. I'm going to take the under.
Don't forget, Mike Yurcich, he's now their offensive coordinator, runs a different system than what Penn State had before. That could be some of those growing pains that Sean Clifford's going through. I think it's taken them some time to really find a rhythm within the offense. But I'm with you. I'm just not a fan of the offense in general. I don't know how effective it's going to be. I think they could be challenged in this case versus that Auburn defense. But again, I think Auburn keeps us close. You talked about it being a low-scoring game. I love the under, too. I actually think that's probably my favorite play between the two is the under, not even necessarily so much the spread.
We also get number 19, Arizona, going to number 23, BYU. BYU's hyped up. They're going to be at home. They're coming off that big win against Utah here. Arizona State still favored on the road in this one, Danny, by 3.5. You're going with BYU to cover. Tell me more about that.
Well, Amanda, this was one of my worst plays last week. I thought Utah was going to roll through BYU, and I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I like Arizona State, but I think this BYU team, who didn't get a lot of credit coming in, Zach Wilson's off to the NFL. Their schedule was a cakewalk last year. I think they were tired of being written off. And they've showed that they can go with anybody in the country. That was a physical performance they had against Utah. One of the more impressive wins of the season. Arizona State, I like them, but they need to prove it to me that they can take this show on the road at altitude, which I do think is going to impact this game. So give me BYU as the home dog and those points.
Been there, lost there. It's tough. The altitude, I think you look at their scheme too, defensively, a lot of 3-3-5, mixture of pressures and looks. It's tough for any quarterback, in particular one in Jaden Daniels, who, again, another guy who has never really come along throwing the football, Danny. So I've got some major concerns there. And then I look at Jaron Hall and the way he stepped into Zach Wilson's shoes. Not quite as prolific of a passer. Maybe some of that had to do with the schedule that they play, which you touched on. But he does add a little element to running the football. So that's going to be the element, or really the key, I think, to this one is that BYU offense, Jaron Hall, what kind of impact he has with the rushing attack along with their backfield. But going up against the Arizona State defense that's been very opportunistic, getting turnovers, negative plays, but they haven't played anyone. So this is the first challenge, I think, for Arizona State to really see what they're capable of versus a very capable offense.
That is an aggressive game. We have an aggressive schedule. We have about 20 games we're going to try to get through here in the next hour. That was just 3 of them.
Are you trying to tell us to be quicker?
No, you guys are doing great. No word from producer Jack so far, but I do want to recap your picks here. It is all Alabama for both Brady and Danny. Both of them like the under in that Auburn-Penn State game. Danny also leaning Auburn there to cover the 6. And then when it comes to Arizona State at BYU, both having faith in the Cougars. Coming up on HQ, we're going to take a look at the number 2 team in the nation, the Georgia Bulldogs hosting South Carolina. They're favored by 31, but can they cover that number? Maybe not so fast. We'll have that next. Let's welcome back in Brady and Danny. So let's talk about South Carolina headed to Athens there, as I mentioned. It's a big number for the Bulldogs, favored by 31, over under 48.5. Brady, what do you think about that 31 in the total?
It's a big number for Georgia. Now, this does look like the second best team in the country right now. I think the way they've played, that defense is feisty, and they're massive, and they can stop the run. They haven't allowed a defensive touchdown all year, only 2 yards per rush at this point in time. So that's really going to be the challenge for South Carolina that has typically run the football well. Remember, their quarterback situation is a little bit of a mess right now. Zeb Nolan has started the past couple of games. He's played well, but he'll have to be more than serviceable in this one. I'm not sure what's going to happen in this game because I don't know who's starting for Georgia at quarterback. If it's JT Daniels, I think there's a much better chance Georgia covers this number. If it's Stetson Bennett, I'm not so sure. He looked great last week, but the more we saw him last year, the more it really didn't work out quite the same. So I'm going to go ahead and be on the side with South Carolina. They typically play Georgia tough, and in particular, last time these two teams were in Athens, it actually went the way of South Carolina in that case. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to take the 31 points in this one, but I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I don't know how much South Carolina's going to score, and I don't think Georgia's going to score that much.
Yeah, I'm with you on the side of South Carolina covering here. They're 2-0. Shane Beamer has this team playing with a lot of heart, a lot of emotion. I don't think they're going to roll over late if it gets ugly. I think they might be a little more feisty towards the end of the game, that they're losing by 28-ish. Maybe they kick a field goal for a backdoor type cover. And Georgia's offense, I don't think they're built to blow out many teams, especially SEC teams. And I know South Carolina's not that good of an opponent right now, but I just feel like, defense is awesome, but how awesome are they when you take out the backups? They don't need style points anymore because they beat Clemson, so the incentive to go out there and just blow South Carolina out isn't there. So give me the Gamecocks and all those points.
We get New Mexico at A&M. Of course, the big story for A&M, Zach Calzada taking over as quarterback. Haynes King fractured his ankle in that game against Colorado. He'll be out till at least mid-October-ish. I know some of our experts a little questionable about Zach Calzada. A&M still favored by 28 here, Danny, and you're comfortable with that.
I think there's a lot better games you could pick out there. Like, I don't love either side in this game, but I do think there's something to Zach Calzada coming off to the bench early in that game. Haynes King is a different type of quarterback, right? He's mobile. He could run around. Zach Calzada, not as much so. So I'm sure Jimbo will tailor the game plan more to Zach Calzada's skill set. And I also think there's some embarrassment of this is a team that was, hoping they're having their hopes set on possibly making a playoff run. They go in Colorado in the Pac-12 and it's ugly and they might have lost that game and they knock out a couple plays late. I'm going to go with they take out some frustration on a weaker opponent. And I do think Jimbo Fisher wants to kind of get that offense rolling because their schedule is a cakewalk until Alabama comes rolling to town. I think this offense has to get better with whoever's there at quarterback. So I think he might be more inclined to leave in some starters to get them extra work later in this game.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think the biggest concern right now is you're just trying to win football games. That's all you care about. It's a big number. They should be able to win this easily. Whether or not they cover the number, I don't think so in this case. In part because I think New Mexico knows exactly what Jimbo Fisher's going to want to do. Take pressure off of Calzada. He's going to run the football with Isaiah Spiller, Devon Achane, and then he's going to rely on that defense, which was absolutely suffocating last week. Only allowed 54 total yards in the second half in Colorado. So that's going to be their recipe. On the other side of the field, though, New Mexico, they got an experienced quarterback. Look, Terry Wilson is a dual threat. Threw for over 380 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. So he gives them a fighting chance. You know they're going to have the edge up front, but I think Wilson's mobility will play a factor in this one. So look, Texas A&M wins this game, probably by 3 touchdowns, all right? I don't think they cover, though. I'm going to go ahead and be on the side of New Mexico here, but I do think there's going to be enough points scored. I think it's going to hit the over.
We have Tulane at Ole Miss, of course, as well. Remember, we saw what Tulane did against Oklahoma in that very first game. Ole Miss, though, favored by 14. Vegas expecting a shootout in this one. The over-under is 74 here. Brady, you're going to attack the total. You're also looking at the spread there. What are your 2 plays here?
It's just too many points. I mean, look, I get it. Michael Pratt's looked great for Tulane. Matt Kroll is now second, I think, for the Heisman right now based on the odds. So there's definitely the chance you're going to see a lot of firepower. But at the same time, I feel like if my intuition's telling me anything, go back to week 1. What did that look like in college football? 65% of the unders hit. I think that's what you're going to see here. All that being said, though, this Ole Miss team is playing at a different level. At Kroll, we can talk about his playmaking ability, the way they've been able to run the football. I just love the fact that if you look at their defense, I know we called it the land shark defense back in the day. It feels like that's coming back. They will be challenged by Michael Pratt with everything he can do in the pocket, outside the pocket. I like Ole Miss here, though, but again, I like the under probably better than anything else. That's just too many points for me.
I think this game is skewed by what Tulane did week 1 against Oklahoma. But if you remember, that was a weird.
That was emotional.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'm like you. I would bet on my emotions.
It was emotional for you.
No, but I think people are looking at Tulane saying, man, they almost beat Oklahoma. They got to be great. Oklahoma was playing in front of not many fans, but it was last minute. Exactly. So, but it wasn't a great performance for Oklahoma. Michael Pratt, great young, freshman quarterback. But I think people are reading too much into that game. I think I'm with Brady. I think Ole Miss is a really good football team. I think Matt Corral is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And this defense, what they did against Louisville in that opener was really impressive. They were one of the worst defenses in the entire country last year. They're definitely improved, and if they're marginally better, they're going to be a tough out for everyone they play on their schedule, including Alabama. But I think Ole Miss rolls in this one. I think they get back on track. And I actually like your under because I think Tulane's going to struggle to score as many points against this defense.
74 is a big number. Georgia Southern at Arkansas. Arkansas's hyped. They're hyped right now after that win against Texas. They're fined $100,000 for their fans rushing the field. By the way, this is the first time they've been in the top 25, Arkansas, in 5 years. Danny, you are not buying it. They are favored by 23.5 at home. You're going the other way.
So I'm buying Arkansas. That was a really impressive win, but I think they're still celebrating. I think the players are still walking around campus being told how great they are. That is a coach's nightmare. Now you get an opponent you should blow out. I could see this being one of those games where you look up in the second quarter and it's 7-3 and it's kind of ugly and you're thinking, what happened? Well, you were still celebrating all week long instead of focusing on the opponent. Only one coach in college football rides his team so that they never have letdowns, and that's Nick Saban. I think the natural human tendency comes in here. I think they're a little lethargic. I think they win. I think they get control of this game, but that's too many points for me.
It's a lot of points, and especially for the style of play when Arkansas wants to play. I mean, they want to grind it out. They want to run the football. They're going to play good defense, but that's what I think this comes down to, is if their defense could hold down Georgia Southern. But in all honesty, it's not so much about celebrating in my mind. It's about like how bumped up, how bruised, how sore are they this week. It was a tough matchup versus Texas. I know they dominated, but you can only do that so many times, get yourself that hyped up so many times, and not fall victim to or trap, into that trap of having a letdown. So I just look at this matchup and I think Arkansas will come to play. I don't think Georgia Southern's going to score very much. They got blown out by FAU last week. So this is looking like a game to me where I'll go ahead and lay the points with Arkansas. I think they'll score enough to be able to cover that spread. But I love the under here. This is going to be a low-scoring game.
I like your perspective. Brady's all business. It's a tough game, and Danny and I are like, they're partying all week.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not saying it's a tough game. They played a tough game.
Yes.
And sometimes that ends up impacting how you play the following week. That's all I'm saying.
How many schools would have written $100,000 for a win this past week? I got one that I went to. Florida State would have paid it for a win against Jacksonville State. So teams will gladly play that for the celebration on the field, especially that monumental win.
Here's a recap on their picks here. So they've been on the same side as far as the teams are concerned up until this point. They're going on opposite sides when it comes to New Mexico at A&M. Brady says, look, A&M's going to win. That 28, a little too rich for him. Danny's saying the same thing when it comes to Georgia Southern at Arkansas. Maybe celebrating a bit much this week, going with Georgia Southern there to cover. Coming up on HQ, it's the first time Clemson has been out of the top 4 since 2017. So can they climb back up the rankings? And better yet, can they cover against Georgia Tech? That's next. Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ, getting you ready for week 3 here, taking a look at the ranked ACC games. We're going to go through a couple of them. Actually, we're going to go through all of them. Let's be honest here. Got Georgia Tech at Clemson. Both Brady and Danny have a play on the total in that game. Virginia Tech at West Virginia. Note, it is not the ranked team that is favored there. And can Virginia be a real threat to North Carolina? So you get Georgia Tech at Clemson here. Before the break, I mentioned this is the first time in about 5 years that Clemson has not been in the top 4. And so we always get a very angry Dabo. He's even angrier now. They're favored by 28.5 at home. The total here, 51. Danny, I mentioned he had a play on the total. What is it? I'm
going to go under. I got DJ Uyunglele has been struggling somewhat. I know against Georgia, you have a built-in excuse. One of the best defenses in the country. But on the season, he's only completing 54% of his passes. They're not clicking yet as an offense. I think this is the game that they get right. But on the flip side, Georgia Tech is not very good right now. So I think Clemson's defense, which we saw on full display against Georgia in that loss, I think they have their way with the Georgia Tech team. I think Clemson probably covers if I was going to take a side on this one, but I think ultimately it's going to be a lower scoring game under that 51. I think Georgia Tech might have trouble scoring a touchdown in this one. So I think Clemson rolls, but I think it'll be a lower scoring game.
I'm right there with you. The play in this one is the under. I do like Clemson, and I think I'll lay the points. Look, Jeff Collins, the head coach of Georgia Tech, he's never won back-to-back games, so it's not going to happen this week after winning last week. I do think the offense started to find itself a little bit last week versus South Carolina State. Put up a big number, but as you touched on it, DJ Uyunglele just does not look like the same quarterback we saw in a small sample size last year, and ironically, kind of on a big stage in some of those starts in some of those games. So he's gotten off to a slow start. I think this is that get back on track game. That's what I'm betting on in this one. I think DJU starts to kind of climb back into that Heisman conversation and has one of his better performances. So I'm laying the points with Clemson, but I love the under here.
You know what I worry about Dabo? Like, he's upset. Like, I think he knows that his team's going to roll through the schedule. Like, how do you get them to really have an urgency? Yeah. I think he's struggling with it right now. We get number 15, Virginia Tech at West Virginia. West Virginia, the unranked team here, and they are the ones that are favored at home. It's not a big number. It's 3, but Brady, what do you think about this game?
This one looks fishy to me. I don't really understand it. Virginia Tech's been playing some very good football. Now, I've realized they're not the most prolific team through the air. They're going to run the football. Braxton Burmeister plays a factor in some of that, and they're going to play stingy defense. And West Virginia doesn't have a ton to offer on the other side of the football, at least throwing the football or even offensively running to the level we've seen from Virginia Tech. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going with Virginia Tech. I think it's a low-scoring game. Two defensive battles between Neil Brown, his defense, and what he's done in West Virginia. I just don't think we're going to see a lot of scoring. So I like Virginia Tech. I'll gladly take the 3 points, and I love the under here.
I'm with you. I'm going to go with Virginia Tech here, too. I'm going with the Hokies. I still think that was one of the more impressive wins they had against North Carolina. I know people wanted to write off North Carolina, but I still think that was an impressive win. And Braxton Burmeister, the transfer, came in from Oregon. He's not not lighting up the charts, but he's just gritty. Like, he finds a way to win. He gets down the ground. He makes good decisions with the football. So I'm going to take the Hokies here as the road team.
Virginia at North Carolina. This is a fun Virginia offense. They're undefeated coming into this game. North Carolina 1-1 after losing that opener to Virginia Tech. The Tar Heels favored by 9. Over under here 64 and a hook. Danny, what do you think about this?
I'm going to go with Virginia. As much as I was just raving about the Tar, Virginia Tech looked great against this team. I think Bronco Mendenhall is one of the better coaches in college football. They always get outstanding effort, and I'm a little bit concerned about where North Carolina is after so many people had picked them to win, their division, to represent in the Coastal, to make that championship game. So I'm going to go ahead and take Virginia. Wahoo wah here. I think UNC wins the game in Chapel Hill, but I think Virginia's going to put up a fight. I watched a lot. Their game kicked off at 11, so I actually got stuck watching the game against Illinois, which wasn't the prettiest game, but they impressed me with some of their defensive effort and some of the throws their quarterback made.
No, UVA is one of the better defensive teams in the ACC. They haven't allowed a opponent over 14 points yet this season, and Brennan Armstrong's been pretty prolific through the air, so they can put up some points. That's one of the reasons why I love the over in this particular matchup, probably better than the spread. I'm going to go out on a limb, though. I think this is where Mack Brown and North Carolina, they start to show their sense of urgency. Sam Howell got back on track last week, 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing. Antoine Green showed up as well. So they're starting to develop some of those playmakers on the outside. But again, I like the over-under better and hitting the over here, in part because I just don't know defensively what we're going to see from North Carolina. They struggle in that department. So a lot of points. Love the over. If I have to, I'll go ahead and lay the points with North Carolina.
We get Michigan State at number 24, Miami. Of course, it's been up and down for Miami. Pounded by Alabama, beat App State at home. I just hope they sweep for Cats. I hated that video. I never want to see it again. I'm still very emotional about it. Hurricanes favored by 6.5 at home, over under their 55.5. Brady, what's your pick here?
I don't know. Cats? I mean, am I picking Cats?
What happened to the cat? I just want to know.
Cat looks safe. Looks
True
safe
story. I didn't know. I was like watching. I'm like, and my daughter was watching it with me.
Terrified.
I'm like, is she going to see a cat die? But it was saved by the flag.
Look, they've got 9 lives anyway. It would be okay. And I think Miami's got a little extra life too right now.
Yeah, it's a sign. There you go.
It's a sign. It's the way they're playing right now.
Way to roll into
Some people call that a dead cat bounce back, right? That's more of a financial term. Maybe that's what we're going to see here with the Miami Hurricanes. I like Miami in this one. Look, offensively, I think they've struggled at times throwing the football, but they can run. All right, with their stable of backs, obviously Derek King too. He's a dual threat quarterback. This is one of the better offensive lines they have. I think they're going to get the better of Michigan State up front and making some plays on offense enough to be able to cover this number somewhat safely. I think Michigan State's going to have a hard time matching up with that speed. And defensively, look, Miami got some pressure on Bryce Young at Alabama. It just came down to the fact that Bryce Young was able to buy time and make plays with his legs. So this game comes down to this. If Miami can stop Kenneth Walker running the football, I think they've got this one in the bag. Either way, though, with the way both these teams can tote the rock, it's going to be a condensed, shortened game. You're going to see some defense. Love the under, and I'll lay the points here with Miami.
I don't remember what we had last week, but I know for the Cover 3 lock spot, I had App State. That game had letdown all over it for Miami last week, and I think people are reading a little bit too much into that performance. That was a survive and advance. Like, that's all you want to do if you're Miami. You don't want to get beat twice by Alabama. They did that. They dodged that bullet. Now they can kind of get healthy. The other thing, too, noon, Michigan State coming down to South Florida. The humidity's still here. We all know it very well living down here. I think that's going to play a factor, so I think Miami pulls away late and covers the number.
Do I need to go to one of those games at some point?
Well, yeah, unless you're afraid of cats falling.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, never mind. We're going to talk about this off air. Let's recap their picks here. How did it even get in there?
food. I don't know, looking for
It's
food.
Florida. Come on.
Dude, there's cats everywhere. Brady going with Clemson to cover the big number there, 28.5. They both like the under in that game. Both going with Virginia Tech. Brady likes the under there. And then when it comes to Miami, both taking the Hurricanes to go ahead and cover the 6.5 at home against Michigan State. Coming up, it is the game Oklahoma fans have probably circled on their calendar, maybe even more so than Texas. The Sooners hosting Nebraska. Brady and Danny each have 2 plays in that game. And getting you ready for week 3. So this is the best of the rest. We've split them up by conferences here. The best of the rest. We got Cincinnati. Its first Power 5 opponent of the season. They're actually going back-to-back. They're going up against Indiana. Coastal Carolina looking to keep cruising against Buffalo. And then Notre Dame, they need to cover. They need to cover because they haven't the past 2 weeks, and it's been a little rough. What? What is that face?
They've won.
They've won. I get that.
I mean, this isn't horseshoes. It's not how close you are, okay? They've
right.
won.
Look,
that's all that matters.
You had Notre Dame to cover the first 2 games. I may or may not have put money on one of those. And I feel like I need like $20 or something. We're going to talk about that game here in a minute. We're going to start with Cincinnati at Indiana. Cincinnati favored by 3.5. The over-under here is 50 at this game. So they're getting the points on the road. Danny, what do you think?
So this is a little bit of a contrarian play because I do think Cincinnati clearly is the better team. I think there's going to be a lot of people that pick Cincinnati. I'm going to take Indiana in the points. I think this is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a physical game. And again, I go back to Indiana. It was ugly against Iowa. They went on the road, got completely manhandled, but they had 2 pick sixes in that game from Michael Penix and a 3rd interception, which did not help their cause. I think Michael Penix is going to play a little cleaner. You saw Jack Tuttle, their backup, come in and play a little bit. But this defense, I think, is pretty solid. I think they're going to be able to contain Desmond Ridder somewhat, slow them down to kind of make this game a little bit uglier. I think it's close in the end, and I want to see Cincinnati go toe-to-toe with the big boys.
Do you want to change your pick? Do you want to change it? No. I'm asking for this reason because I think you're talking yourself into liking the under better than you do the actual spread.
Right.
Because I keep hearing you say ugly. You're talking about
Yes.
defense.
Maybe I'll throw that in as well.
We got Mike and McFadden. You know, I mean, those guys are able to get after it. It's a high-pressure defense from Indiana. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I love the under in this one better than I do the actual spread, but I'm going to be on the side of Cincinnati. I really think this is going to be a special year for Cincinnati. I think this is their year to make a case for potentially playing in the college football playoff. Desmond Ridder's been phenomenal, and he continually keeps getting better as a passer, too. I think it's one of the things that are a little bit underrated about his game is he can play from the pocket. It's just he's got the ability to hurt you with his legs as well. 7 total touchdowns on the year, and I know they haven't played stiff competition, and this is the beginning of that, but I think he's going to handle the pressure from Indiana's defense just fine. And I've got more questions about Michael Penix, who, if you go back to last week, they beat Idaho handily. They really didn't ask him to do a whole lot. And I think he struggled throwing the football. He's coming back from an injury, 2 ACL surgeries on that same knee. I know they want to hang their hat on the rushing attack and play the game that way, but I don't think that's a winning formula versus Cincinnati. So I hate the hook. I'll go ahead and lay the 3.5 here, but I like the under. I think it's the best bet here.
We get Purdue at Notre Dame. Okay. Notre Dame favored at home by 7. Purdue is undefeated. Notre Dame is the better team here. Both of you are taking the Fighting Irish to cover. So go ahead, Brady. Tell us why.
Well, look, I've got some concerns. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You look at their offensive line from Notre Dame right now, they're extremely banged up. That being said, I mean, their offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, has done a tremendous job being able to find ways of changing things up. We saw Tyler Buckner, the freshman quarterback, get in last week. Very shifty, very athletic. They mixed in a few different pass plays, RPOs, to allow him to make, kind of change up the rhythm of that game. And I really do think it's going to throw Purdue off. So the bottom line is, even though they've got some issues defensively, this is the worst defensive performance we've seen to open a season in quite some time in Notre Dame. I think they'll be able to do enough versus Purdue to limit their effectiveness. And we're only talking about a touchdown here. So I'm going to lay the points with Notre Dame. I think that's the best play on this one. I do think it'll be a low-scoring game. 50.5 looks kind of high to me, so I like the under if you want to play that as well.
I'm going to take Notre Dame as well. You know why? If you guys show my finger, so my finger right here, this ring finger.
Do you look at the video
Yeah, I don't want to see that video. I broke a ring finger during a game. I didn't go over to the trainer and have him straighten it out. I know he just dislocated it, but still, that was one of the grittiest things I've seen. And then the next play comes in and throws a touchdown pass to Michael Mayer. I think this is very similar to the Miami App State game. Like, I know Florida State's not very good, but that was an emotional, hard, physical game that was in overtime on Sunday night. Short work week, coming back. No one's watching the game because it's buried on a different network, so there wasn't a lot of excitement around it. I think that was like hangover city. They had it all over it. I actually liked Toledo in that game. This one, I think Notre Dame wakes up a little bit more. They come back. I think they excised their demons last week. I think they roll past Purdue.
I think it was a wake-up call, too, for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that was one of the best things for them to be able to win that game, but also realize that they're going to get everyone's best shot. They're going to get Purdue's best shot, who's running the football, too, by the way. I think that's one of the reasons they're going to try to shorten this game and limit the amount of possessions that the Notre Dame offense is going to get.
I will put another $20 on this game. So thank you. And I want to win next week. We get Fresno State at UCLA. UCLA has been very impressive so far this season. Favored by 11.5 at home. Over under here 51. Danny, what's your play in this game?
I'm going to go with the Bruins. I believe in Chip Kelly's squad. I liked them coming into this season. If you dove deep into their schedule last year, you saw how many games they lost tight and they lost late. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's playing a lot better, and it helps to have a physical run game up front. I think this is the vision that Chip Kelly had for this UCLA squad. Things are starting to click more, way more efficient on the offensive side of the ball. They are a physical team, as we saw. Fresno State's a tough, tricky opponent. Like, this is a tricky game, but I'm going to go ahead and lay the 11.5.
See, UCLA wins this game, in my opinion, but I do think Fresno State might come in the back door here and keep this one close. Reason being is Jake Haener can sling it around. And this is a high-pressure defense from UCLA. They're going to try to put pressure on him as much as humanly possible. And I think the times we've seen Jake Haener deal with that, he's dealt with it quite well. So I think Fresno State's keeping this one close. UCLA wins. They keep things rolling. Also, this over-under at 61, I think we're expecting a high-scoring game. The opposite ends up happening. I think both offenses might try to have a hard time finding their flow in this. But at the end of the day, UCLA wins. And they keep moving on. Maybe they are the best team in LA right now with everything else that's going on with USC.
We'll see if we can get to that in a second. We made it to our 20th game, by the way. Coastal Carolina at Buffalo. Coastal is a 13.5-point favorite there on the road. Over under here 57.5. Danny, I love the love that you give Coastal on the Cover 3 podcast. So go first.
Give me the shots. I'll tell you what.
Fun.
Jamie Chadwell and his mullet. The only thing I'm mad at him about is he had a stash that he was rocking with the mullet during training camp, and then he cut it once they got to the season, but he's rocking the mullet. And I tell you what, this offense is so much fun to watch. It's like this hybrid, like triple option offense that you put the quarterback, Grayson McCall, you pull him back in the shotgun, you still run some of those concepts, and instead of throwing it 4 times a game like some of the academies do that run the triple option, they spread the field and they throw it vertically down the field. A big reason why Grayson McCall is completing 82.5% of his passes. Last year he was close to flawless. This team is fun. I think, again, incentives. What do they have to go out there and improve? They want to try to say, hey, Cincinnati's not the only Group of 5 team out there that's worthy of the playoff discussion. So I think this is an opportunity for them to win big. Buffalo, too, I think is hurt from Lance Leipold leaving and taking that Kansas job. I don't think they're quite as strong as they were last year. So give me the chance.
No, they're definitely not quite as strong, but I do worry about Coastal Carolina coming into this one. It's in Buffalo, maybe a sleepy environment. People aren't quite as excited about it. I wonder if Buffalo can hang around this one for just a little bit. 13.5 points feels a little bit much at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to take the points in Buffalo here, but I really love the play of the under. I think that's where this is at. That Coastal Carolina defense can put pressure on many opponents. I don't know that Buffalo's going to score that many points. I think Coastal Carolina will put up their fair amount, but I don't think they're going to hit that over. So if I had to lay a bet here, I would play the under more than anything else. But I'm going to go ahead and take those 13.5 points and thinking that maybe Coastal Carolina gets caught off guard a little bit in this one.
All right, looking at their picks there, both taking Notre Dame to go ahead and cover the 7 there. We're not sure if Danny does want to change his pick on Cincinnati and Indiana, but as of right now, going with Indiana. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.